Hi, this is Rod Faulkner, and you are listening to the SeventhMatrix.com Eye on Sci-Fi podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 170 of the SeventhMatrix.com Eye on Sci-Fi podcast. The podcast where we share with you terrific indie science fiction and fantasy, online short films, web series, and also conversations with actors, directors, authors, producers, and other talented creators who are making sensational indie speculative work. Thank you for joining me, and I am very excited for you to join me because this is a very special episode, our 170th, in which we have a returning guest. David Kirkman is a director based out of St. Louis, Missouri. We first had him on Eye on Sci-Fi back in 2019 to talk about his independent short film that became a viral sensation. The short film was Static Shock, based on the Milestone Comics superhero. It was made on a shoestring budget, but its impact was enormous on the internet. And the last time that I checked, the short film had garnered over 1.1 million views on YouTube. It is our pleasure to welcome David back to the podcast to talk about his latest exciting project, his first full-length feature film entitled Underneath Children of the Sun. This film is an Afrofuturist epic. So without further ado, please enjoy the latest Eye on Sci-Fi conversation with film director David Kirkman. David, man, welcome back to the Eye on Sci-Fi podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Rod. It's good to be back, man.
I revisited our first conversation. It was only 3 years ago, June 2019, when you came on to talk about your viral sensation of a short film, Static Shock. And man, the world has gone through a lot since then. It feels like a lifetime when you look back on it. Most notably, the global pandemic and then all of the social and political unrest here in this country. So I'm glad we're able to reconnect.
Man, honestly, it is. Yeah. It's been a huge tectonic shift since the last time we chatted.
Yeah, so much has happened. So we have you on because you have an exciting new project. Now, is it your first full-length feature film?
Yeah, it is. It's my first feature. And obviously, you mentioned the last time we talked 3 years ago was when I did a short film, Static, which was based around the Milestone characters. And we ended up doing a few more short films in that world after then, too. But yeah, all of that definitely was kind of training ground to be able to tackle something like this.
I definitely want to touch on your Milestone mini cinematic universe that you created. We talked about that when we chatted the last time. And brother, I commend you, and it is remarkable that you and your team over at Woke Nation were able to produce and release not only Static Shock, but then you went on to release your Icon short film and then Hardware. And given what the environment must have been like because of the pandemic, I just applaud you because that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, man, it was really tough. We were fortunate enough to not really have any outbreaks, but we had to follow protocol and things like that. Even at the height of the pandemic, when people weren't going out at all, so I would say around like June or so of 2020, I made a short film based on Noble, which is one of the characters in Icon. And just to play around, and it was very grounded. There was no supernatural things in the film or anything like that. It was like really cool. But you're right, man. All of that it was just training ground. I learned so much just like making those films. Even with Hardware, when we finished that last year, I was fortunate enough to get Joseph Illich, who was one of the interns and eventually became a part of the staff of Milestone Comics back in the 90s. I was able to get him out here, him and his wife, and that was really nice. And it was just a nice cap on just the whole thing, and to see the cast and the crew just react, it's like, this is a living legend, right here in St. Louis. It was really cool, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I saw that he was involved with, I think, one of the premieres of Hardware. And Joe
Mm,
Illich is just one of those seminal figures in creating the original Milestone comics back in the day. So that was
yeah.
quite an achievement to get him involved. He is a spectacular writer and just one of the legends, as you say, in the comic book industry.
Yeah, totally. Super down to earth guy. I think he was hesitant at first, over time. Just we talked through it or whatever, and but he came for that whole weekend. He was here, and it was just amazing. It was amazing. It was like that was one of the most surreal moments of my life so far. Number one, having him there, and just that entire weekend was incredible.
I
So
bet it was unforgettable. And to my listeners, I'm going to include a link to my first conversation with David that occurred back in 2019. And also, you will be able to watch Static and then, of course, explore all of the other short films and specials that he and his team created based on the Milestone Comics universe. And I know that you all will enjoy it. And now we're going to delve into your latest project. You just don't stop. You're like a
yeah.
locomotive, man. You have completed and are getting ready to release your full length feature called Underneath Children of the Sun. Share
Sure.
what the film is about.
Underneath is basically a story about a that takes place during slavery, and it just plays around with this idea of what would happen if a slave actually came across an alien being. The alien being actually looked like him, so it was like a black man from a different planet, and what would that interaction and whatnot be like? There's a little bit of history in there and galactic politics, and we dabble with multiple realities and whatnot. And so it's really fascinating. It's really cool. I actually wanted to make this like right after Static had came out, but I definitely wasn't ready to tackle something like this. Yeah, I wasn't ready to tackle something like this at that time. So I had to like put that on the back burner a little bit. But then just kept developing it. Script went through so many different drafts, and it's totally different than what the initial idea was, because as you're making a film, things like this kind of evolve. And I think it's one of the hardest art forms ever because it encompasses so many different art forms and technical skills and business practices. And I was fortunate enough to start filming last. I did a test. We went out first time filming out of town with this, and I was able to get actors from various cities: St. Louis, Atlanta, LA, Boston, New York, Chicago, everywhere. I was able to bring them here to St. Louis. Then we went out of town and did like some test shooting there. We had a Kickstarter that was up, but that was pretty unsuccessful. But I ended up getting a fellowship at Washington University here in St. Louis. And that's like a number 14 school in the country. Now, that's a big deal for me because I had dropped out of college, and to just come back in through that door was really interesting. And so, with the research funds and the grant and whatnot, I was in the salary that I was on, I was able to basically put all of that into the film. Of course, this was still somewhat volunteer kind of basis for most people. So we started production officially last fall, and then we ended principal photography in May. So overall, it was about 50 days of production altogether.
Okay.
And we would film, even after May, I would be filming things here and there just to help fill in some of the gaps. And the third act was one of the things that I had to really work on because I was like, this ain't working. And so the whole process is just a very kind of fluid process. Like you have vision and things like that, but you have to be fluid enough to move and not be so stern or stuck on a certain idea that you have to look for better ones that are going to fit the story and the timeline and the deadlines and stuff that you set for yourself.
I'm going to delve more into the production of Underneath because, man, it looks so ambitious in scale and in scope. Looked like you guys were in the desert and you had
Yeah.
a snowy type of setting and then under the
Mm,
sea. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to
mm,
get to that. But what inspired the concept of the film? I know you just said that it morphed a little bit and changed, but that you
mm.
had an inkling of it even when you were making Static. So what
Right.
inspired Underneath?
Static was really just, they're all passion projects, but I mean, Static especially was one of those things was, what would it be like to see something like this character in this world on screen? And it was just something that me and my friends would talk about in college. In high school, like, why haven't we seen a Static Shock live action film? Why don't we just go out and make it? We're film students. Why don't we just go out and just do a concept pitch or something like that? But it was birthed out of this desire to see the extraordinary in a somewhat grounded way on screen. And so Underneath was birthed out of that same idea. It would be like, what would it be like to see some very high concepts, but excellently executed Afrofuturist tales on screen? And so that was the desire behind it, and that was the intent behind it. And at the time, I didn't really know what Afrofuturism was, and now it's become a lot more popular. Obviously, you have the film Black Panther came out in 2018 as well, and that kind of opened up the door into mainstream about what this genre actually is. And I think Static and Milestone was always a part of that, even in the comics in the 90s. But now it's this really focused definition and genre of what the Black imagination can do and be. And so that's what Underneath was birthed out of, just this huge desire to see Black excellence in the Afrofuturist, the Black sci-fi space. And,
You mentioned Afrofuturism, and I saw a tweet that you released yesterday, and you said that Underneath is not sci-fi, it is Afrofuturism.
Yes.
Elaborate on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people try to get bogged down into, like, with sci-fi and science fiction, there has to be a huge science component in which the fiction can bounce and leap off of. And sci-fi especially has been something that has been mostly defined by the white space. And so with Afrofuturism, you're coming into this world where we're looking at Black history. We're looking at where can our Black futures be. We're also looking at how expansive can the Black imagination be as well. I think the main component, like the main difference is there is a future with Black people in it, and technology is used as a component of our freedom, our liberation, and just an integral part of whatever story we're trying to tell. And so that's really what the biggest difference is, because a lot of it may not just be based on logical science that has been defined by the white mainstream. This is Afrofuturism is an actual reality for Black people. It is this imaginative space that we can go to, that we do go to when we sleep at night, that we talk about, that we dream about. It's all of these things and all of these dreams and hopes. It's a reality for us. And so that's really like the main difference.
I love your explanation, and I agree about Afrofuturism in that the Black community, we do exist in that space because of our imaginations. It comes forth through different skill sets, whether it be art like music or yourself through film, even science, and also social activism and the quest for social justice. Because imagining what a world looks like where we are truly treated as equals and have equal access, that enables you to move forward and give you a blueprint. So yeah, man, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I do appreciate that you made sure to publicly make that distinction. And I love that filmmakers like you, because of the work that I do in covering just in general the speculative genres, I really am seeing a lot more filmmakers in the Black community be able to bring forth their visions of the future, because it is so necessary to have. And yeah, this just really excites me to no end. Now, talking about the production of Underneath, first of all, I love seeing your cast react to the trailer. I thought that was fantastic. But when did you know that it would be such a huge undertaking? Because again, you went to all these different locations that had different environments. And again, remember, listeners, this is during the height of COVID-19. So when did you realize, once you solidified your script, that, oh man, this is going to be ambitious and require a lot of logistics and a lot of movement? I'm just curious about that.
I don't know if there was like really a moment where I realized it, but
it snuck up on you.
Yeah, exactly. It did. It did sneak up on you, man. It's one of those things where you can plan as much as you can, but things still shift and change. Whether you have people who can't do it because you have behind the scenes logistical people who might be sick one day, but you like really relying on people like that, especially when you're going out of town and you have to have things also moving and progressing here at home base as well while I'm out of town, like doing the shoot and whatnot. Then we're talking about doing a lot of driving everywhere, 15 hours away from St. Louis, and there's 10 of us out there, multiple people flying in, flying out from where we were shooting. All of it was shot in most of it was shot in Colorado in regard to the desert. We shot in the Great Sand Dunes of Colorado, which was amazing. We went there twice, once over the summer and then once over the fall of last year, and then ended up going to the Rocky Mountains in Colorado to shoot there, which was the complete opposite, the total opposite. That was the snowy. It was kind of like you're driving up the mountain, you're 9,000 feet in the air, and the air is a lot thinner.
Yes.
So it's a little bit harder to breathe, and it's like going into Chronicles of Narnia because everything below you is like warm, the sun is out, it's shiny, and then you just literally you see the transition just into the snow.
Your poor lead, your other cast members were chiding him about how cold it was, he was freezing. Sacrifice for that art.
Oh yeah, we were not out there very long. We thought the sand dunes were pretty rough, and it was because it's like shards of glass like hitting you all the time. It was so windy. We were out there for a few days, but we were only out there in the mountain for one day. Yeah, we couldn't be out there that long.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. But Colorado is beautiful. I've been there once, and at some point in time, I want to move out there, but it is gorgeous.
Yeah, it is.
I'm glad you guys were able to take full advantage of all of that natural beauty. Now, you mentioned earlier that you learned a lot in the making of your Dakota Chronicles and your mini Milestone universe that helped you in terms of helming your first feature film. So what were a couple of the main lessons that you think you learned making your shorts that really helped you in pulling together your feature film?
Oh, honestly, a few things. So being flexible, extremely flexible is one of them. The first time I really started having people come in from out of town to work on the film was Icon. Jordan Walker, incredible actor. He's also the main character in Underneath. He played Icon. And at the time he was based in Atlanta. Now he's based in LA. But it's like small stuff like that. And so I'm learning how to manage, all right, how do I bring somebody in? How do I treat this person and make sure that accommodations are taken care of? And then even on the technical side, just learning about I think managing is like the biggest takeaway, managing people, managing just the team and the overall project management. And
how are you with delegation?
I'm pretty good with delegation. Honestly, I feel like it's been a lot less of that because I feel like I've grown recently, especially like with Underneath. It's just like, like on the hardware, that was the first time I really or Noble, I should say. That was like the first time I really shot a film just with the camera, for instance, just operating the camera. And I was like, I'm pretty good. People were like, Dave, you should probably shoot, just see what you can do on your own with hardware. So I did it. And the cinematography was pretty good in that. And then with Underneath, it was just like the next level. I did have help, obviously. I had a lot of help. I have my two main producers, and then I have my visual effects person who was based in Ohio but came in from out of town for a few weeks to be on set, and he was helping advise because there's almost 400 visual effects shots in the film.
Wow.
And that's a lot. That's every 2 or 3 shots in the movie.
Yeah,
so
it's quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a lot. You look at, like, for instance, like The Dark Knight had 2,500. So this is a lot, especially for an indie film.
Exactly.
So managing people, obviously delegation is really important. We had crew members come in from New York and Kansas City just to be there and just help out and be on the set. But in regard to some of the things that I did, I'm an editor. That's the first thing. So I think editing was the biggest technical advantage that I had. I've edited every single project I've done, and it just reverse engineered itself. So editing and cinematography, and then now my first time composing. I composed the soundtrack and the score for this movie.
Fantastic.
So
Well,
yeah.
editing in particular, David, you mentioned that you're primarily an editor. And in my opinion, editing doesn't get, in terms of being a profession, the recognition that it deserves in terms of creating the final product that we see in terms of a film.
Yeah, absolutely. The editor is basically becomes the director of post production.
Okay.
And if you want to look at it in that way, because they have to go over every single frame, every shot, and be familiar enough with the shots to know what is good and what is bad. And
Exactly.
so the director, if the director doesn't really know that process, they won't know when to push an editor on certain things or when to not, or be like, yo, I remember that there was another take on this shot. Because as you edit, your memory fails you a little bit, things like that as a director. But the incredible thing is, it is a super collaborative process. And we've had about almost 19 drafts of this movie alone.
Wow.
And it's 90 minutes. So I get, from my core people, I don't let too many people see it because I don't want people messing up with the vision or anything. But I get, from my core people, I get a ton of feedback, technically, story wise, and they push me. They push me to get that level of excellence. I think we're all trying to strive for in the film and storytelling. So
the trailers that you have released look gorgeous, just beautiful, and it really did amp up my excitement even more to see underneath.
What was your
The proudest moment on set? You said to yourself, David, this is going to be something special.
It really wasn't on set, but it was like so it was like driving back. Actually, okay, there was two moments in which I thought. It was driving back down the mountain once we got done filming that. And I was
making like, your escape.
Yeah. It was during that, because we were out there in Colorado for basically a whole week just shooting stuff. And my camera had broke out there, so I had to get a replacement camera. It wasn't the exact kind of camera that I had, but I had to get the closest one I could to get the same kind of quality. And so that was a lot of obstacles there, just off the bat, filming in Colorado. But that was the moment coming back from there where I was like, I think this is something really special. Because I'm like, what kind of indie filmmakers, I'm based in St. Louis, so would do this, get a lot of these actors to come from different cities, various cities, come to Colorado, be put up in a hotel, and just focus on working on this vision. And it was so beautiful while we were out there. It was just really inspiring. The second time I think it happened, now it kind of changed a little bit, because once we got done shooting all our stuff in the fall, it was just like, okay, now the third act that I had in the movie that had written down the script wasn't really going to work out at all. So that was disappointing. So I had to rework that entirely. So we got the shoot done in May. I finished editing the movie again, and the third act still wasn't working. And so I was like, all right, there's supposed to be a huge kind of space battle sequence, which we were actually going to do. It was going to take a little bit more time to do it, but we were actually going to do it. But I was literally editing. I got an email from the Africamera Film Festival saying that they would like to screen the film. They saw the trailers, and I'm like, where is this? It's in Poland. And I'm like, all right, cool, this is all right.
Challenge accepted.
All right, now this is in July, and they're saying they're looking for some films to close out the festival in October.
Wow.
So I said, whoa, okay, how in the world am I going to do this? Number one, I don't have a lot cut yet. Everything is still fluid. I have like a cut. I have several cuts, but everything's still fluid. So I ended up spending like the next couple of weeks just basically writing the entire third act. And that ended up being, to be honest, to me, the last 30 minutes of this movie, I think are like incredible. It ended up being like the strongest to me personally. And there may be other parts to other people, but to me, the last 30 minutes of this movie is, you haven't really quite seen this done on film on any level, I don't think, before.
Interesting.
I'm not even exaggerating that.
Okay.
It took us a minute to get there.
Teaser.
Oh yeah, it took us a while to get there and to really refine it and to make it comprehensible. Because sometimes, since I'm on the project so much, I could be in my own head, but you have to have people with a cold set of eyes just look at the film and watch it and be like, understood this, understood that. And so that, when late September ended up rolling around, I had completed the music, I had finished the edit. That's when I said, this is going to be, it was like our Apple moment. It was me, my producers, my business partner and his family. We were all just looking at the TV screen, and that was our Apple moment, man. That was like, we created our first Mac. So there we go.
I think that's wonderful. And I really do appreciate, and what I respect about you, David, is that you are so committed to your local community there in St. Louis, even though this was a very far-reaching collaboration with this film because of its scale and its scope. I like that you have public showings of the film, the first public showings there in St. Louis. But okay, everybody else will want to see this too, man. So what are the distribution plans for the film that you can share? Because I want to see it.
Yeah, I know.
We're
looking into so many different cities like Atlanta and DC and LA.
Okay.
Right now, it is primarily in St. Louis, but next week I'll probably be in Philadelphia, like teasing that. I got to talk to some people there. But yeah, I'm in talks with a lot of people. So the rollout is slow, but it's happening. We're even going to be in Sao Paulo, Brazil that first week of March. So the show.
Okay. Oh, wow. Fantastic.
So yeah, we'll definitely be getting around. And so as we get more concrete things happening, we're kind of in an interesting period because a lot of the film festivals, like deadlines and stuff, are up.
So let me ask you your philosophy on this, if I may, as a filmmaker, because I've heard both camps, and I'm sure you have too. Where do you stand in terms of preferred distribution? Because there are many directors and filmmakers who are real precious about getting a theatrical release. And then there are filmmakers like Ava DuVernay who's, look, if I can get it on streaming, I want as many people as possible to see what I have made, whether it's in theaters or streaming, I don't care. Where do you fall within that spectrum?
I'm kind of in between on it. I think my viewpoints on this is definitely in the middle. It's a filmmaker's dream to have a theatrical release and also have a streaming distribution deal where they just pay you all up front. For me, it just boils down to, number one, where you're at, where your audience is, where they're going to be, and what kind of machine is really backing you. You can have a theatrical release all you want, but you honestly need to have a machine behind you to really push that into multiple cities, to get people to physically leave their house and come to the theater to see it. There has to be something there, like a following or a built-in community space, to where that can actually be a thing. Now, I think that the theatrical release way, if you do have that, you have a lot more of your stories hit the cultural zeitgeist a lot more. And it pierced through that a lot more. People talk about your films a lot longer because you can have the theatrical and then also go right into streaming.
Right.
So it's not like you automatically cancel streaming out. But with streaming, there's the immediate built-in subscriber base. There is the almost immediate payout. So let's say if you're an upcoming filmmaker and let's say, I don't know, Netflix pays you $1 million for your feature film, are you going to say no to that? You're going to be like, I'm going to invest this money into the next. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So it's like, I can do theatrical all I want, you know what I'm saying? But I'm going to get this bag first and then do that. So it also depends on where you are career-wise. Right. But that's not a knock against streaming. I think streaming definitely has a place, especially if the streamer promotes the projects and the films and things like that to make sure it gets the most exposure possible. So I'm in the middle on that.
Okay. I cannot wait until Underneath is available to the public so that we can all see it. So where can my listeners go to find out more about Underneath and keep tabs?
We're pretty active on all the social media. So Instagram especially. You just type in Underneath Movie on Instagram. You can also go to underneathmovie.com. We have all the screenings. You can support us with our merch there, or just if you just believe in the cause and you just simply want to donate, you can do that as well. So that's all there. You can follow me online. I tend to post quite a bit of updates on my end as well, at David Kirkman on any social media.
That sounds great. And I will definitely make sure to include links to your official website for the film, as well as all the social media handles in the show notes of this episode.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Anything I can do. And I'm probably going to snatch one of those Underneath t-shirts because I saw them and those look pretty neat. I'm a minimalist and I love that sleek, minimal styles. David, look, congratulations, and please send my regards and congratulations to the rest of your cast and your crew. You all have accomplished something really special, and I think the world is going to feel the same way.
No, thank you so much, Rod. Thank you for having me, and thank you for supporting.
Oh, it is my pleasure, man. Thanks for being on. Take care.
All right, you too.
And there you have it, the Eye on Sci-Fi podcast conversation with returning guest, director David Kirkman. I am going to leave in the show notes links to his forthcoming feature film, Underneath, Children of the Sun, and as well as to our first conversation with David that we had back in 2019. To access the show notes, just visit the7thmatrix.com and you will be taken directly to the show notes of this most recent episode. And you will have access to our archive of show notes from all of our other previous episodes as well. While you're visiting the7thmatrix.com, I encourage you to check out all of the other terrific indie science fiction and fantasy short films, web series, and other media that we have curated and covered on the site. I also need to ask you to visit our support section to find out how you can help us continue to do the work that we do. Without the kind and generous support of listeners like yourselves, we would not be able to do our work here on Eye on Sci-Fi and over at the7thmatrix.com, and we do appreciate that. Make sure to leave us a review and rating wherever you get your podcast, because that does help others find us, and we appreciate that a great deal too. Okay, that's it for this episode, everyone. And again, I appreciate you joining me for this very special episode. So, until the 7th Matrix portal reopens, stay safe and healthy out there. And remember, take a break, escape the mundane, and enter the fantastic. Take care.